Welcome to the Allegrativity Powercast with Allegra Sinclair. Get ready to punch fear in the throat, show up, and tell your story. Allegra Sinclair is here to help you become the powerful woman you are meant to be. It's finally time to get unstuck and reveal how fabulous you are. And it's time for your host, Allegra Sinclair.
Hey, this is Allegra. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. And I am super excited because my guest today is someone who I actually met online and have never seen in person. So yes, Virginia, you can develop real relationships over the internet and they don't all end up creepy like the, what is that? The Craigslist. This is not that kind of situation. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about her and then I'm going to hush and let her speak for herself. But I met this fabulous, powerful woman about a year ago online. We were both kind of running in the same circles around web design and a particular framework. And one of the things that attracted me to her tweets was, in addition to talking about web design and, good ideas around there, she every now and then gave me a little glimpse into like the rest of her world with like a powerful quote or a question that made me just stop and go, oh, wait, what? I want to know more about that. So we have had a couple of quick conversations in the last 6 months or so, and I just knew I needed to share her with you. So please welcome Tamala Huntley. Hi, Tamala.
Hi, thank you so much.
You are welcome.
And I have to ask first, am I on my good business behavior, like filtered, or?
We are all about authenticity here.
Okay, because I was going to say, you might have saw like a ratchet or a ratchet tweet or something.
No,
too.
If I did, I would not have mentioned that, right? I'm a powerful brand building ally. But what would you like us to know about you?
Good question. I'm just me. I like authenticity. I like uncomplicated life, be that relationships, be that work, whatever the case may be. I like things uncomplicated. I tend to live in my own little happy-go-lucky fairy world on purpose. Not to say that, I'm not realistic about things and things like that, but I just like
simplicity.
Yeah. Simplicity, great word.
In a former life, I was a communications manager.
Good, because apparently we're going to need that.
Yes, so if nothing else, I do have the vocabulary. Well, thank you. And I'm always fascinated by how people choose to talk about themselves, because sometimes we tell people things that we didn't know we were telling them. So I'm not saying that you just did that. I just always say, what would you like us to know about you, instead of saying, hey, introduce yourself, because I think it feels different. So one of the things that Tamala and I were talking about a couple weeks ago was clarity. And we talked about so many things, but we talked about clarity, both clarity, like personal clarity, like understanding who you really are. We talked about clarity in your business. But the thing that really sparked my imagination about coming on the podcast was we talked about independence versus dependence. And we were specifically talking about location independence, because you are getting ready to move. When are you moving?
In February.
And how long are you going to be moving for? Is this a temporary relocation or permanent?
No, it's permanent.
And where are you going?
Well, my first stop is Costa Rica.
Oh,
I'm so excited. Insert all of the celebratory music and all that.
Okay. You're moving to Costa Rica in February.
Yes. I'm a little nervous, but I'm more excited than nervous.
And why are you going to Costa Rica in February?
I don't know how I ended up choosing Costa Rica as the first place that I wanted to go, but when I stopped working full time for other people, I just decided that I wanted to go visit all of these different nice Caribbean beachy countries. I don't know if I saw something on television or I saw something online, and it sparked my interest because they were saying it was good for expats and all that kind of stuff. And then the more research that I did, the more that I found out about it, the more that I really wanted to go, because it really exemplified all the things that I just told you about myself. Pura Vida, the whole, pure life is simple, life is happy. That's like their whole mantra for living there. They have some of the happiest people on earth. They live the longest, stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, well, this really is my country. What am I doing here?
So, fascinating, because many of us might have found out all of that about Costa Rica and been like, hey, I'll go for vacation. Right? I'm just saying, right? Many of us would have thought, okay, so I'll go for vacation, maybe hang out a week. Hey, maybe I'll even take 2 weeks, but then I'll come home. So what made you decide that you wanted to live there all the time?
Because I can.
Love that. So let me ask a question. When you shared that with your circle, how did they respond?
Some of them were like, Costa Rica, why you go to Costa Rica? The question that I get the most is, do you know anybody there? Like, how did you pick Costa Rica? Some of the same things you asked me. How did I pick it? Why did I choose there? Do I know anybody there? Am I coming back? How long am I staying? All this kind of stuff. So, but for the most part, everybody's, been supportive. But then I don't surround myself with people most of the people I surround myself with are big dreamers as well. And so, they're pretty supportive. And they're all looking for, their spot, waiting for their spot so that they can come over anyway.
So they'll come visit. Okay, that's funny. Now, when you say you surround yourself with people who are big dreamers as well, I love that. That's so tweetable, surrounding yourself with big dreamers. But does that extend to your family? Because what you sound like you're describing your chosen circle. And I'm a little bit fascinated as to whether the people who you didn't choose, but who are still in your circle, how did they respond?
My immediate family is pretty small. It was really just me, my mom, and my sister. And, for the most part, they've been okay. My mom is kind of like, you can't leave me. You have to come back, so she's a little leery, but she also knows that, when I feel like it's something that I have to do or something that I want to do, she doesn't try to stand in the way or anything like that. So
I love that. Will this be the first time that you have been that far away from your family?
No, not at all. When I graduated I'm born and raised in Florida. I went to college in Florida. When I left college, I had an internship in Houston, Texas. And so I moved to Texas straight after school, and I lived there for 15 years.
Wow.
And I just recently, that's where I grew up. That's where I became this me. The past 4 years have been a lot of evolving too since I left and came back to Florida, but that's why I became grown up Tamala. So no, it's not the first time. And I've kind of always, even as a kid, I've always kind of been a loner and kind of to myself. So I don't think it was anything surprising to them.
So I'm an IBM child.
Okay.
And IBM in the old days meant I've been moved, because every 18, right? It just used to, forget international business machines. Every 18 to 24 months we moved when I was growing up. And since that was my life, I didn't know that was odd, right? So I was accustomed to being in new places and moving a lot, whereas I know a lot of people who have never left the town that they grew up in. Now, I thought that was odd because that wasn't my life experience. So when I graduated, I went to 3 different colleges, first of all. All those 3 working on my undergrad. So I went to 3 different colleges in 3 different states. But I remember I went home eventually, right, back to New Jersey after I graduated. But I remember moving to Arizona and encountering a lot of resistance, not necessarily in my most immediate circle. And I don't think I was hanging out with folks who necessarily dreamed big at the time. But I think to them it was so glamorous that, this person they knew went off to college and then got a job big enough that they would actually move them. Right. So to them it was, wow, this is really cool. And Arizona it might as well have been Egypt. And I'm just saying, right? So most of my mom's family was in North Carolina. So for her to be in New Jersey was a big deal. So for me being in Arizona, it was just okay,
You flat out moved across the country.
Yes, right. But they're saying, hey, we were getting on a plane most likely anyway, so it really didn't make that big a difference. But people closer to my age freaked out. So to them, the unknown, I had that question as well. Do you know anybody there? No. But I was so comfortable being new in places that I was immediately on like the Arizona transition team, helping other people who were struggling with that decision, right? Figure out how it would be a good thing. Cause I'm like, are you kidding? It just sounded like excitement to me. Now looking back on it, I realize that is, for a lot of people, a really bold move. I do recognize that is punching fear in the throat for some folks to hop up and move to another place. Even if they wanted to do it, even if they're excited about it, there is still that fear that you kind of have to get past. But I think you touched on something really good, which was how do you get good at taking risks, and how do you get good at doing things, being afraid and doing it anyway? You have to keep doing it. Right? It's one of those things you just kind of have to practice. So have you found that your willingness to take risks in other areas of your life has translated into you now being completely willing to go to Costa Rica?
For as long as I can remember, I've always kind of been like a risk taker, or like I'll do, once I decide to do something, I'm going to analyze it to death probably, initially I'm going to analyze the heck out of it. But once I decide to do it, it's a wrap. It's done. Like I'm doing it, whether it's staying up late to get something done for a week or whatever. Once I decide, then I start taking the steps to figure it out. But I think it's also just a part of the way that I've been trained, because, in engineering, they teach you take this problem, you analyze it, you figure out all the pieces, and then you go about solving it piece by piece. And so I kind of tend to break things down into piece by piece. And it's funny because even still, like, I still have moments where I have to remind myself to not give in to fear. And there are some areas where I totally don't do well with that. But most of the time I'm just kind of like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? And it's funny because there are still little things that make me nervous. Like when I first decided I was going to go, I was happy and all this stuff. And it's actually 4 years in the making. And then as it's gotten closer, like a month ago, I realized, okay, I'm getting nervous. I need to do something. So I bought the ticket. I bought the one-way ticket. I was like, okay, ticket purchased.
Okay.
No turning back. You're going.
So it's like a little baby recommitment.
Yeah. It's like a enforced, I don't know, kind of like, you're enforcing the decision that you've already made. So I bought the ticket. I posted it on my Facebook and I was like, it's officially official. Done. And so and then other people's excitement about it also helped to make it even more exciting and, to dull the nerves and that kind of stuff all over again. And then I just realized you've done it before. So, it's another country, but you've done it before. And if you don't like it, go somewhere else or, fly somewhere else. It's only 2.5 hours away.
There is so much good stuff in that. So one, I love that, right? So you recommitted in a very visible way and in a way that held you accountable to others. So sometimes we'll say we're going to take a big risk and it's like the best kept secret in the world, right? Because if we don't tell anybody, then if we don't do it, nobody can say, hey, weren't you going to do X? Remember that thing you said you were going to do? Because if we don't tell them, then they can't check us on whether or not we did it. But the second piece of that was you said people's excitement helped reinforce your commitment. And I'm going to suggest there were people who weren't as excited, but it didn't matter. So I think one of the things is, and I don't know if this is a condition that comes along with ovaries, but sometimes we want so badly for other people to kind of co-sign our decision that if they don't, it's devastating. And I love that you are living out that if other people are excited, that's great. And if they're not, that's okay too. Because your vision and your dream is different. So why would you expect someone else to see with your glasses, right? Everybody's prescription is different.
Exactly. And it took me a long time to finally become comfortable with, who I am and what I like to do, what I don't like to do, what makes me happy. Like I said, I'm simple. Simple things make me happy. Like I don't have to have a lot of things. I don't have to, constantly be doing a lot of things and all that stuff. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm finally okay with the fact that I can just sit on the beach with a book and be happy. Like, some people may find that boring. Some people may find that, like I post a lot of pictures about the beach. It's an integral part of my life and who I am. And I'm finally okay with that. Like picking up and moving to Costa Rica I'm trying to get my stuff down to maybe like 3 suitcases, bags. I'm okay with that. Like totally okay. And so I think it takes a lot of learning, a lot of, I don't know, it's just, processing through life and processing through different experiences to finally become okay with who you are.
You said earlier that you were reminding yourself of past successes because you were saying to yourself that as you kind of experience some nerves about the move, that you remind yourself, hey, you've done this before. You got this, right? And if you get down there and you don't like it, then you can make a different decision. But as part of that, you said that in some areas, this kind of willingness to take risks is really showing up and in others, not so much. So I kind of wanted to poke a little, not in a personal way, but are there specific areas where fear is stronger than others? Not the specific fear. I'm not Dr. Phil. But for instance, are there specific zones where you're like, okay, so I'm kicking butt with the fear thing over here, and over here, my confidence is still taking a beating?
I'm reading this book called The Big Leap, and he talks about your upper limit, and when you have a upper limit problem, and that upper limit is you get yourself, things are going great, life is good, and you get to this upper limit where then you start thinking, okay, what's going to go wrong, or what bad thing is going to happen, or can I really be this happy? Like, is this really okay? There are some times when I deal with that as it relates to business and just the lifestyle that I've chosen, because seeing other people not necessarily live the life that they want, or that they've expressed that they want, or that that they want.
So what I heard was there are a couple of areas that you said that you still deal with fears, and one of them is around upper limits that you're reading about in this book called The Big Leap. So the upper limit, is that about finance or how it is that you work?
No, the upper limit is just in general anything as it relates to when things are going good, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's finance, whether it's business, whatever the case may be, it's great. And then you have this upper limit where, okay, this is going great. How am I going to, not that you consciously say this to yourself, but your subconscious acts on this. How can I sabotage this? So it becomes self-sabotaging. And so as it relates to business, there are some things where I kind of do that because I'll sit on something, or like I have this idea of things that I want to do. And then the fear of, well, what will people think if and it's going to sound contradictory in a second, but
we're women. We don't have to. I'm sorry. That's just, I know that comes with ovaries. Some of this other stuff, I'm not sure where it came from. But we absolutely are. We are a study in contrast. But we're just so pretty and so cute while we're doing it. Right? It's worth it.
Right.
So we are a study in contrast.
So while I'm cool with who I am and knowing, having clarity about where I want to go and the things that I want to do, at the same time, there are these instances, especially in business, where even though I've been doing this, like building websites and doing online business and all this stuff since 1998, probably late December 1997, there's still times where I question what I know and how much I know and who am I to teach this to somebody. And, there are 1,000, 10,000 people out here teaching the same thing or showing people the same thing. What do you have that's different? Why will people listen to you and all this stuff? When the reality is every day people are listening to me. Every day my clients are asking me questions and I'm answering questions on the same stuff every single day. But it's this weird mind thing where you have this upper limit or these, mindset issues that you have to get past. And so that's one of the areas where, sometimes I have to deal with fear, and sometimes I'll procrastinate it, and I won't go ahead and step out there. Although I did take a big leap this past week, so yay.
So it's interesting because you're talking about kind of what you do for business and for work. So that's the first time you've mentioned it. So you develop websites, and you develop websites for specific people. So who's a good target for you for a website?
My target is life and wellness coaches, and I really kind of just came to the conclusion that was the best niche for me because I resisted having a niche since 1998.
And why?
Probably one of those fear things where it's kind of like, okay, if I niche, then I'm going to be eliminating these people and I'm going to be lessening the pool of potential clients. When what I found, and even just this short period of time that I have decided to focus on a specific niche, it's totally the opposite. Like, people know what you do, so they know more so what you do. And so you get more specific referrals. You get to work on the type of projects and with people that you really like. Like, I love I'm a personal development junkie. I'm working on, the whole health thing. So I like, wellness and health and wellness. And so it's like focusing on that niche. It's the best of both worlds because I get to learn from all these people because my clients are brilliant. So I get to learn from them. And it's something that I like learning. And then I also get to help them in the areas where I'm strong at, which is figuring out all this online tech stuff.
Awesome. So as I'm sitting here thinking, I think most of the people in my universe who I was looking up to when I was growing up all worked like regular gigs, like they got a job and went and stayed until they got their watch and then retired. So I do know some entrepreneurs in my family, but for the most part, we were like company people. So I was wondering when you were talking about what you do for work and how there are other people who don't do kind of what they dream about doing. And I'm wondering if part of the kind of, is this really work? Because that's what I'm hearing. Like, so some of the, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me, but some of the kind of internal conflict or the conversation is, I am having so much fun doing what I'm doing. Can this really be my career?
Right. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's not so fun because one of the things that I decided when I left working full time was that I'm not going to create another job for myself. Like when doing this starts to feel like a job, then something has to change. That's just non-negotiable. And there have been times where it has. And so when that happens, I just reevaluate. But I've been an entrepreneur. I've had an entrepreneurial spirit ever since I was 10. I sold Avon at 10.
Okay.
Which was pretty much the equivalent of giving my mom the book for her to take to work with her.
That like living your dream job, like you just can't wait to get up and go do it thing, sometimes feels like it's for other people. So I just wondered if there was any of that, because I think that we go through the lessons that we go through to prepare for where we're supposed to end up. So I don't know if Costa Rica is the location, and guess what? I don't have to know that. You do, right? That's not my work. But if you were doing another job, like a full-time engineering job, you couldn't be embarking on this journey. I mean, I don't know about where you worked as an engineer, but I'm pretty sure most of those places wouldn't let you just decide to hop up and go do it from Costa Rica on the schedule that you set. Am I right about that?
No, that's absolutely right. And when I left working full time, I was working full time in ministry. So I worked at Texas Instruments for about 7 years as an engineer. Then I worked, had a little in between time. Then I worked in full time ministry for 6 years. And then I decided that I'm going to be 40 in 4 years. That was 4 years ago. I'm going to be 40 in 4 years. And there's just some stuff that I want to do.
You decided that you were going to be 40 in 4 years, 4 years ago, or you're going to be 40 4 years, from now?
No, I'm going to be 40 in, what's today? The 13th?
October.
I'm going to be 40 in 15 days from now.
Oh, I'm going to say, welcome to 40. It's fabulous. I'm over 40. Girl, please. So I'm excited now. I was not excited when it happened, but that's a whole other podcast. So you were working as an engineer, then you worked full-time in ministry, and then you said, hey, I want to make some shifts into how I'm living because time is passing and this isn't how I want to spend most of my time.
Yes. And, being the person who studies personal development like I do and all this kind of stuff, I've wanted to live a certain way for a long time. And it was just about finally having the guts and getting past that fear, punching fear in the throat to say, okay, let's do it. And that's just kind of where I was. And once you have the taste of it though, it's like, there's no going back. Like if I had to work on somebody's job right now, I don't know how I would do that. Like, thank God I don't. When you decide, there's a lot of things that go with that decision, right? Like everybody doesn't want to, I'm not saying that you have to live with less in order to pursue your dream. That's not what I'm saying at all. But everybody doesn't have the desire to not have a house, to not have, like to go to another country, not have a house, not have a car, not have certain things. And that's not to say that once you get to the other country, you can't get those things. I'm just being kind of general. But everybody doesn't have that same desire or, that same dream to want to do that. And so I guess it's just a matter of figuring out what you want to do and how you want to do it. But most people or a lot of people always say, I wish I could do that or I wish I could do this. And I just kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, well, why aren't you? Is what I asked myself, why aren't you doing it? And if that meant making the decision to live with less for a little while I got to that place where I wanted to be, then that was like, I guess you can call it a sacrifice, even though it doesn't totally feel like a sacrifice because I'm content and I'm happy where I am. It may not be perfect, but it's perfect for me.
I don't think you have to put on ashes to sacrifice, right? I think it's how you look at it, because sometimes the sacrifice feels like, okay, I can't believe I can't have ice cream every day, right? And other days it feels, right. Oh, I'm sorry, is that just me? And sometimes it's like, oh, I can't believe I can't have ice cream every day. And other times it's like, okay, I don't care that I didn't buy a brand new car this month because I'm investing that money somewhere else. So
exactly.
It's the mindset. So if it feels like I'm saying no to this thing so I can say yes to this thing, then it doesn't feel as much like such a big deal that you're sacrificing something for something else.
Right. And the biggest part is knowing what that thing is. Because once you know what that thing is that you want, once you really, really know, like there's nothing that will stop you from going after it. Even though you may have stutter moments where, you kind of get stuck and have to punch fear in the throat over and over and over and over again.
That's why you have two fists.
There's nothing that won't stop you from trying to get there.
Right. Now, what do you think that you take from your engineering training and from your time in ministry that uniquely prepares you to help life and wellness coaches be found on the internet?
Well, a couple things. And the engineering is like kind of like you said just a little while ago, and I'm probably going to paraphrase it because like the different places where you are and different things lead you to the spot where you're supposed to be. And so I think that engineering was a part of the foundation because it also helped me with my work in ministry. However, working in ministry was way more work and harder than being an engineer. But as a part of engineering, I learned systems. I learned problem solving. I learned how to manage projects. I also did technical marketing. So I started, learning marketing and that kind of thing. So, some of the basic skills. And then working in ministry, I honed all of that. I used all of that and then some. But the other thing that ministry showed me was interacting with people, even though I still have to work on it a lot, having patience with people, compassion, and change. Like, because in engineering, it's either black or white most of the time. There's no gray. In ministry, there's a lot of gray.
And do you find there's a lot of gray in figuring out how to tell your story online?
Oh, absolutely. Because you also have to be willing to kind of go with the curves, like you test something out, it doesn't work, then you try something different. You have the systems, you have the processes and plans and stuff in place, but it doesn't always work. And you have to be willing to adjust and make mid-course corrections. And that was one of the hardest parts, but one of the hardest things I had to learn when I first started working in ministry was mid-course corrections, because we decide on something, we decide on a plan of action, and I'd be like ready to go. And then you come in the next day and it's like, oh, we're doing something different. And I'm like, what? What the what? What do you mean? We just sat all day and figured out this plan. What are you talking about? So you have to become really comfortable with, changes and changing on the fly. And that's like anti-engineer, right?
Well, I worked with a lot of engineers, but I never really understood what it was that they did. Right. It wasn't that I didn't have an appreciation for it. I just didn't understand it, hadn't seen it up close and personal. So I think as I said, right, I was always in marketing or always in communications. And I always thought of what I did at companies as being so dramatically different from other departments. But the more you work with people, the more you figure out that the skills do translate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. A friend of mine calls me the queen of systems, because I will have a system and write out notes and plan things to infinity and beyond.
But one of the things I find fascinating, because I am a communicator, beginning end, right? I mean, that's what I have always done. Like you were saying, you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur since you were 10. I think since I was 5, I knew, right, that I just wanted to figure out how to make people communicate better with one another. But one of the things that I think is fascinating is when people think about online, they want it to just be one thing. They want to learn one thing and then have it be that and never change, even though that's not how we market anywhere else, right? So, when I tell people, you have to show up and tell your story, and they're like, well, show up where? Okay, that depends. It's a good question, right? And I'm like, well, that depends. Who are you talking to? Because you want to show up where they are. Right? You don't want to try to build something and make everybody come where you are. You need to go where they are and then be noticeable. So where you show up is different for everyone, right? And then the tell your story part, that's the critical piece that we've kind of been talking about here, as well as you've been talking about how you finally got comfortable with what you wanted to do and with who you were and kind of what your strengths were, and, clarity about kind of who you wanted to help. And it was fascinating when you were talking about picking a group of people you wanted to work with. When I was younger and I would think about a business, to me, the broader the business was, and this was before I learned, right? So the broader my business model, the better, because I never wanted to think about turning away money. And a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about people who are so talented that they don't necessarily get a lot done because there are so many things that they could do. Right? So if you're good at 6 things, man, my heart goes out to you, because you don't know which of those 6 to do. And if they don't fit together and you're trying to chase 6. So Carrie Wilkerson said the other day, you can't ride a one horse with 2 high knees. And I was like, oh, I'd heard chasing 2 rabbits, but yeah, I guess riding a horse with 2 high knees, that works as well. But to your point, the clearer you get about who you want to talk to, and about what, the better. So if you come to me and say, I am going to start a business, what's my first question? Great. Doing what? If it takes you more than 30 seconds to answer the question, you don't know. You're not ready. You aren't. Because if your business, if you say that your market is everybody, you don't have a market. Because let's be real, even Walmart can't market to everybody, and they have money. I mean, I'm not saying unlimited, but you know what I mean? You have to know who you're talking to, and it can't be everybody, and it shouldn't be everybody. But we're afraid that the universe isn't abundant enough with that one thing that we've decided that won't work. But as you said, what you have found is it does work. Because if I know that you create websites for wellness professionals, it's so much easier for me to find connections as I go about my life that make sense for you. Or if you just say, oh, I help small businesses market online. I don't know what to do with that necessarily.
Right, because with small business, and then you end up getting a lot of projects that don't hold meaning for you. And sometimes you're like a deer in headlights, because it's like, okay, do I take this or not? Or because once I learned that all money is not good money, and once I learned the power of
There's another tweetable. All money is not good money.
And once I learned the power of saying no, and being okay with saying no. Like, I'm real good at it now. Like, some people say they have problems saying no. I think I have problems saying yes. But once I learned the power of saying no, it's like it opens up a whole new world for you. And I was actually thinking today about this blog post that I was thinking about writing, because I'm working on that, like writing more blog posts. But I was thinking about this one, and the thought that came to my mind was, two of the most major shifts in my business came because of one little word. And the word is focus. The first time I was coaching with Sandy Krakowski, and we were doing like a WordPress experts course. And one of the things that she told us and kind of like drilled into us was focus. Like, I can do a whole lot of things. That's just, thank God, by nature. I'm technically inclined. I can figure things out. You know, when I was younger, I was always rigging stuff with my granddad, figuring out, putting together bicycles, VCRs, all that kind of stuff, even as a little kid. So I've just always been inclined to figure things out. And so I can do a lot of stuff. I can put your books on Amazon. I can make PDF ebooks. I can do some graphics. I'm not a graphic designer, but I know, enough to be dangerous. I can do some stuff to be dangerous. So there's all these things that I could do. And I was trying to do them all, and I was not being successful at hardly any of them. Like, I don't really have any clients. I had some here and there, but not a lot. And so once I decided to focus on, okay, this is who I am. I do WordPress websites. That's it. That's what I do. That's what I focus on. Eventually, I kind of worked up to doing, working a specific kind and that kind of thing. But I do WordPress websites. That's it. And once I decided to focus on that, it's like that was the first major turn, because now all of my energy, just like a laser, right? Like, all of my energy and all of my focus and my time and all this stuff is centered in this one thing. And so it just grew. And then the second time was deciding to focus on a niche. And even though that hasn't been a long time, the reason why I say it's one of the most, the two biggest times is because once I decided that, the laser became even more powerful because it became even more focused. And my marketing, my whatever I do on social media, everything. It's like, it's more focused. And so the message is more clear. And so more people come. Like, the minute I decided to do that and change some stuff, I got like 5 inquiries within the week that I put out there that
this is what I do.
Exactly. That I help life and wellness coaches do the techie stuff. Like, that was, and I was like sitting there looking like, you smart girl. Why did you wait so long? Like, what is wrong?
And you're like, man, why didn't I do this before? So yeah. I have that same conversation with myself. Oh man, why didn't I do that before? But almost immediately, I am coachable, right? I don't know everything, but I am super coachable. So I still have that thought. Why didn't you do this before? But immediately I think to myself, because I wasn't ready then.
Yes.
That wasn't it was not time for that lesson for me. Sometimes you have to get the same lesson more than one time. And I'm one of those people. Repetition is my best friend, right? I'm not the kind of person who will, actually I am kind of, so not like Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. I don't have like an eidetic memory, but once I've heard something, it's kind of in the file cabinet. And I can access it if I want to, but it moves closer to the front of the file cabinet if I hear it more than one time. So one of the things that I have loved, as you have kind of talked about your journey, is taking the time to try stuff and figure out who you are, and then just fully embracing that.
Understanding that, or being okay with like who you were, like who you were like 5 years ago is not who you are today. Heck, who you were last week. If you are, constantly in a state or understanding that you constantly learn and you constantly grow and you constantly change, who I was last week is not who I am today.
Say it again. That was so good. I love that. You're like, get okay with the fact that maybe today you are not the person you were 5 years ago.
Because one thing can change your life, right? Like one revelation, one understanding, one thing clicking into place. You can wake up and something clicks today that didn't click yesterday, and now you're totally different. That, like, I really believe that is possible.
There are so many things. I'm just going to be blowing up Twitter. There's all my Tamalisms. All my Tamalisms. So I have so enjoyed our time with you, but I promised I was going to be respectful of your time. So I want to say thank you so much for dropping by and taking our conversation to a place I didn't know it was going that was so much better than what I thought it was going to be, right? And being willing to be led to where we needed to go. Because I think there were so many lessons around punching fear in the throat and doing it anyway. And like the clarity and the magic that comes from like really figuring out who you are. And I think the real power of your story for me was we hear these stories like about people who are like famous, who we can't touch, who don't seem quite real. But it's so much more powerful for me when I hear a story of like a real person, a like me kind of person, right? Who's modeling something that I'm like, oh, okay. So, I'm trying to think of a famous person. Okay. Angela Bassett did so and so. Well, I am no Angela Bassett, right? Or, oh my gosh, did you see what's the child's name who wrote Lean In? I can't think of her name. You know what I'm talking about? So, oh my gosh. Oh, I just wish that there was like a lean in me. And I'm like, well, there isn't a lean in me. There's a different book, right? Which is okay. But, okay, so I'm not Sheryl. That's the person's name who wrote Lean In. See, it would come to me. So I'm not Sheryl Sandberg, right? And I'm not Angela Bassett. And I'm also not Tamala Huntley. But there is something in each of those people that I can take from to then become the better Allegra. Because I have seen it modeled by people who I couldn't touch and people who I can touch, you know, the closer folks, the role models who you can get on Skype.
Exactly. And there will always be an audience, or there will always, not even, I don't want to say it like it, because in business there's the audience, but just in general, there will always be people who need what you have, or who can find value in what you have. And that was the hardest lesson, one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, is that there are always people who need what you have. Like I have a person who, she asked me, we met at WordCamp in Miami, and just until I got to WordCamp, I had never met her, had never even talked to her online. And we got there and I went up to take a picture with someone, and she came up and she was like, can I take a picture with you? And I was like, huh? With me? Wait a picture with you? Okay.
And you're like, uh-oh, who does she think I am?
Right. And she said, I know you might think this is weird, but I follow you online. Like, I stalk you online. All this stuff that I would tell, that, you know, I'm telling other people who I follow and stalk online and stuff. And she's saying this to me, and I'm like, it was really an eye-opener, because there are people who need what you have, no matter how small or how insignificant you may think it is. And we became friends, and, you know, she asked me to like mentor her. To this day, it's still hard for me to say, you know, that I mentor somebody. I don't know why. I'll get over that eventually. And she considers herself like a mentee of me to help her with her website business. She knows web design, and she can, you know, she figures stuff out and does really well. Like, she's really good. And once I decided on what niche I wanted, like, I started sending people to her, the ones that were not within the niche, the ones I said no to, right. But it was hard for me to accept that, okay, somebody sees me in this light. And one of the things that it helped me to understand and to see, and this is what I was going to say, thank you for inviting me, because especially as an, what you call it, like a freelancer, a person working from home and working alone, you kind of tend to work and live in vacuum. And so this pushes me out of my comfort zone. Like, it snatches me out of my comfort zone, because I would be very content to just sit here, do my work, you know, kind of hide in the shadows and that kind of thing, and be okay with it. And it pushes me to share your brownies with the world. You have these brownies. I'm like, man, I've been hoarding my brownies since 1998.
I had never heard that before, but share your brownies. Okay.
In any case, I just was saying, you know, this pushes me past my comfort zone. Things like that pushes you past your comfort zone, because you don't realize that there are people out there who need exactly what you have. There are people out there who, who you can help even at just the level of where you are. And that's great. And to me, that's what success really is. Like, I have two favorites of all time quotes. One of my favorite quotes is Maya Angelou, and I'm going to get it, even though it's my favorite quote, I paraphrase it, but success is liking who you are, what you do and how you do it. Like, that is so powerful to me, because you don't have to live by somebody else's definition of success. It's how you define it for yourself and what success means to you. And when you really figure out what that means to you, that's when you really start to accelerate towards whatever that success is for you. And then the other one is, that the only thing standing between us and our dreams is the lies that we tell ourselves. And so I constantly ask myself, okay, you're scared to do this, or you're nervous, or there's fear. What lie are you telling yourself? What are you thinking about this? Or the stories, not the lies, but the stories that you tell yourself. So what story are you telling yourself about this that's stopping you from, going forward? And so anyway, all of that to say thank you, because it's really pushed me past my comfort zone, because, I like sitting in my little office and working behind the scenes.
Well, we're glad you raised your head up and that you came out of your office. If people want more Tamala, where can they get it?
Easy. TamalaHuntley.com.
And I will include a link to that in the show notes. And do you want to give your Twitter handle as well?
It's Tamala M. Huntley. There's that whole simple thing, right? Everything is either Tamala M. Huntley or Tamala Huntley.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I have been looking forward to this. I think we've been trying to plan this since like May. But hey, everything in its own time. It's a different story today than it would have been in May.
It is.
Right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you so much for your time here. And thank you all for listening. You can find the show notes and re-listen to this episode either here on iTunes, on Stitcher, or at the podcasts. Or on my website, rather. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Now you've been given permission to be more powerful and influence more people. If you've enjoyed this episode, please head over to allegrasinclair.com/iTunes and leave a review. It will help Allegra get the message out to more women that they can punch fear in the throat, show up, and tell their stories. We'll see you next time on the Allegrativity Powercast with Allegra Sinclair.